Hey everybody, welcome to this instructional video on point of view. Let's get started. So let's begin with what point of view is. So point of view in literature refers to the perspective or the vantage point from which a story is told. Every single story that you read, even every story that you watch, has a particular point of view. So it doesn't matter what it is. If it's a story, it has a point of view. And the point of view influences the narrative's tone, the information that's revealed, as well as the reader's connection to it. So what this means is that no matter what perspective the story is told from, you are only given certain types of information depending on the type of perspective that it's told from. So let's talk about the 4 different types of point of view. The first type is called first person point of view. First person point of view is a narration style where the narrator is personally involved in the plot and they are central to the narrative. They refer to themselves as I. I did this, I did that. The narrator presents his or her own thoughts and views from their perspective and with their opinions included. They cannot explain how any other character is thinking or feeling, but they can describe how other people act. So in first person, it's kind of like telling your own personal story, right? In the real world, you can tell people how you feel, you can tell people what you think, but you can't tell people how other people feel or think because you aren't them and you don't know. So first person point of view is exactly like that. Second person point of view is actually very rarely used, but this is when the narrator addresses the reader as you. It directly addresses the reader and immerses them into the story so that essentially you become the main character. So in a story like this, it might say something like, you wake up, you get out of bed, and you brush your teeth. And what second person point of view does is it makes you, the reader, the character. We then have 2 types of third person point of view. The first is called third person limited. The third person point of view refers to a narrative perspective that's removed from the central narrative. So it avoids any first person language like I or my or me. And like I said, there's 2 types. So this first one's called third person limited. And the third person limited, the narrative perspective focuses on a central character with the knowledge of the character's thoughts only. So this narrator is outside of the story and they can give only the thoughts and feelings of one specific character. So the narrator can get into the mind of that single character, giving their thoughts, their feelings, their actions, but with any other character, they can only give the action. In other words, the narrator here is limited. And so they're going to use phrases like he or she because they're outside of the story talking about people inside the story. And then the fourth and final type is called third person omniscient. This narrative perspective includes all of the characters. So you're outside, again, your character is outside of the story, but they can talk about, they're essentially all knowing. So they can talk about the thoughts and the feelings and the perspective and the actions of every single character. So omniscient actually means all-knowing, like a god. So in third person limited, that narrator can only talk about the thoughts and feelings of one person, but in third person omniscient, they can talk about the thoughts and feelings of everybody. It's as if they know every single person on the planet. And so again, third person omniscient is going to use phrases like he or she. So when you're reading, anytime you see he and she are the main things and you don't see any first person pronouns like I and my, you're going to know it's third person. Anytime you see a story where it's addressing you, you know it's second person. And anytime the main character or the narrator is using I or my, you know it's first person. talk a little bit about point of view versus narrator. The narrator of a story can be a participant in the story, meaning this character is part of the plot, but the narrator can also be a non-participant, meaning they are not part of the story and part of the plot. The point of view in the story specifically refers to the position of the narrator in relation to the story. As an example, if the narrator is a participant, it's more likely than not that that point of view is going to be first person, because the narrator is witnessing and interacting with the events and the other characters firsthand. If the narrator is a non-participant in the story, it's more likely that the point of view will be in third person, because the narrator is removed from the story and removed from the events. Narrative distance refers to the physical distance, the chronological distance, the relationships, or the emotional investment of the narrator to the events or characters of the narrative. So this really refers to the distance between the narrator and the characters or events of the narrative. This could be distance in time. For example, the narrator is in present day, but the characters or the events are in the past. It could be a distance of relationships. For example, the narrator might be a female who's telling the story of events that led to breaking up with her boyfriend. It could mean emotional distance, where like a narrator tells the story about the death of family members, one after another. It could be distance in physical space as well, where the narrator tells a story about Chicago as someone who actually grew up and lives in Chicago. Some narrators are personally involved in the story in that they are characters themselves. And other narrators are separate from characters, from space, and from time, meaning they're just a narrator and they're not part of the story. And finally, it's important that you never ever assume that your author is your narrator. More times than not, your author is not your narrator, and your author is simply creating a narrative voice. So let's look at some examples of each of these. So in first person, it might be something like, I had the craziest night last night and I'm going to tell you all about it. In second person, while standing in his parents' kitchen, you tell your boyfriend you're leaving. You're not going to college. You're not buying into the schedules, the credits, or the points. No standardized success for you. See how the second person actually makes you the character? In third person limited, it'd be something like this. In the dimly lit room, John felt a knot tighten in his stomach as he approached the mysterious door, unaware of the secrets that lay behind it. Notice that we are only talking about how John feels. And then in third person omniscient, it looks something like this. As the rain came pouring down as they walked home from their date, Megan just wanted to get inside and warm up. Mark grabbed her hand tightly, and all he could think about was wanting to kiss her. Notice how this is different from the third person limited because we get into the head of both Megan and Mark. Megan wants to go inside and warm up. She doesn't say that, she's thinking it. And Mark just wants to kiss her. And he doesn't say it, he's just thinking it. Authors select a specific point of view in order to achieve particular events. It's a deliberate choice that influences the reader's engagement and understanding of the story. The chosen point of view affects how readers perceive the narrative. It helps to shape the level of intimacy with characters the depth of information that's provided, and the overall storytelling experience. Thank you for learning about point of view with me. Now you can identify the different point of views as you read, and you can understand the impact that they have.